Hello everyone! In this video we're going to be talking about how to make a simple bar graph in Excel. There are 3 points to this video, the first one being how do we enter data into Excel and how do we plot a graph from it? Once we're there, how do we tidy up the graph? How do we add axis labels? How do we add a graph title? Can we color code the different parts of the graph? Last but not least, we will also talk about how to take that graph and place it into a different document, such as a Word document or PowerPoint, to make sure it's formatted and placed nice and neatly. Now, if we want to make a bar graph in Excel, first we need some data. So let's gather some data in the context of using different temperature water and timing how long it takes for sugar to dissolve in that water. So here I have 3 glasses of water with some sugar in them. One is cold, one is lukewarm, and one is hot. And I'll be stirring them up. I'll run a few trials. I'll find an average of how long it takes for the sugar to dissolve, and I will record the time taken. Here is the data now.
Any ideas?
Now, in order to actually make a graph out of this data, I'm going to open up an Excel document, and the Excel looks like this icon down here. It might look slightly different, but it's got the big letter X and it's a green icon. So click on this and start open a blank sheet, and this is what it looks like. It's made up of a bunch of these rectangles. We call them cells, and there's many of them. You might have used them before, but I'll go through the basics now. Now, if we want to take that data and make a graph out of it, I'm going to type exactly what you saw in the table. So I'm first going to type in temperature of water. Okay, and beneath that I'm going to write down the temperatures of the water. Now you'll notice how the words go over the A column. So in order to fix that, I'm just going to double click on A, and there you go. Double click on A and there you go. You might have to wait until this little sort of plus icon pops up. You double click on that and it'll resize the cell. I'm now going to type in the 3 types of water I had. So I had hot water, room temperature, and cold water. Fantastic. Next to it, I'm going to enter in the details for the dissolve time in seconds. And then I'm going to type seconds in brackets there, just so I know what units it's in. And again, I'm going to wait until I see this plus icon and make the column a little bit wider. Now I'm going to enter in the data that we saw before. So the hot water took 34.8 seconds to dissolve the sugar, the room temperature water took 75.7, and the hot water took 108.6. And there you have it. There's a quick table of your data. This would be perfect to simply copy and paste or to make a similar thing in Word. This tells you exactly what our experiment showed. Now, this data you see here is not necessarily just one trial. You might get this number after computing averages of all 5 trials, for instance, in which case you'd finally get this data as seen here.
Any ideas?
Now, to make a graph out of this, it's quite simple. You first click at the top left cell that you're using. Then you hold Shift, so hold down Shift, and click at the most bottom right cell. So it's this one here, and you'll see it all becomes gray. This means you've selected all the data. Now, you go to Insert, and you click on the icon which looks like a bar. This icon represents bar graphs, so you can click on that, and you click this first symbol here. Click, and there you go. Here is your bar graph. You've successfully put your data into Excel and made a bar graph out of it. But it is not quite as neat as we'd like it, so here comes part 2 of the video. We're going to be tidying up this graph. Have a look at this graph for a second, and notice that it's missing a few things. First of all, this isn't really a good title for our graph, so we probably want to adjust that. This graph is missing a title for its horizontal axis, which is our water temperature, and it's also missing a title for the vertical axis, which is the time taken in seconds. Your graph must make sure it has all these parts in it, not just the data, but the graph title and your axis titles with the corresponding units, if need be. So let's begin on editing this graph. The first thing you need to do is, first of all, click on your graph. So this bar up the top appears. Chart design, this entire bar up the top appears. Now, in order to adjust the title, you can simply double click the title. And so I'm going to backspace the title, and I'm going to type in temperature of water versus dissolve time. This seems to be a far better title. So that's all set and ready to go. Now let's add our axis titles. In order to do it, you go over to the top left and you click on Add Chart Element. And you see here there's a option called Axis Titles. So I want to add a horizontal axis. Sorry. You see primary, horizontal. So I'm going to click on that and this box appears. I'm going to click in this box, backspace what's there, and type in temperature of water. Perfect. Now I'm going to do the same thing and do it for the vertical axis. There it is, and you'll see it'll pop up on the left here. And this will be dissolve time, and in brackets I'm going to write seconds, because that's what we measured it in. If we don't write seconds, then how do we know what these numbers stand for? Does this mean 120 minutes, 120 hours? That's a lot of water and a lot of sugar. No, we measured it in seconds, so we have to make sure we write that down. And this on its own is an okay graph, but we can make it a little bit better. For instance, let's say you were to stumble across this graph and you were to look at the room temperature water, and you wanted to know exactly how long it took to dissolve the sugar. Well, you'd say, okay, it's a little under 80. It could be, I don't know, maybe 70, maybe 75, 77. How can you be sure? Well, the problem is that these horizontal lines, which dictate the different time intervals, are a bit too spread apart. We could make them we could add more of them, so that it's easier for us to read this graph. And so the way we do it is, again, we click on the graph, we go to Add Chart Element in the top left, and we adjust the grid lines. Now, in grid lines, we want to select this, primary, minor, horizontal. And you'll see as soon as I hover over it, the graph all of a sudden has more lines appearing. There you go. And now you can see, if I was to zoom in a little bit, you can see far better now where the graph meets. You see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces separating 60 and 80. So that 20-second margin. So you know each one of these lines corresponds to 4 seconds. And so it's far easier for us to see exactly how much time each of the sugar took to dissolve in its respective temperature water. Okay, so this is good in and of itself, but let's pretty it up a little. Let's color code these bars. If to color code these bars, you simply click on the graph. You'll notice these dots appearing on each of the bars. I'm going to double click just the hot rectangle. I'm then going to right click, and where it says fill, I'm going to click on fill, and I'm going to make it red. And there you have it. Hot is now red. I'm going to click on this again. You'll see the dots appearing on all of the bars. Double click the room temperature one. Now right click, and I'll fill it with maybe orange. And cold, let's make this a lighter blue. And there you have it. Here is a wonderful graph of temperature of water versus dissolve time, all neat and tidy. Now we can move on to part 3. Alrighty, now we want to figure out how to put this graph into a document such as a Word document or even a PowerPoint. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to open up a Word document, like you see here. I've got one already prepared earlier. And all I'm going to do is go to my Excel document, click on my graph, right-click, copy, then go to my Word document, and I'm going to prepare to paste it. Now, I might have a sentence saying the temperature of water versus dissolve time graph is below, and I'm going to paste the graph below. So I'm going to right-click here and click on Paste. And there you go. Here is my graph. And you'll notice it's a bit hard for me to drag around and shift around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the graph. I'm going to right-click it now. I'm going to click on Wrap Text and click on Tight. This means I can move it around far easier. You can do this with pictures too. See, I can put it next to it. I can put it kind of to the left, underneath, everywhere I need to be. And there you have it. Here is a wonderful graph of your data put in a document for you to use. And there you go. There's how you make a simple bar graph in Excel. Thank you very much.